Welcome to the Kendra Woods Show. I'm Kendra Woods, and this is a space for high-achieving women navigating success, self-doubt, and the pressure that often lives beneath it. On this show, we explore the hidden patterns that shape how you lead your life, make decisions, and relate to success. Because success isn't just what you build, it's how you lead yourself. And here, we learn to lead ourselves well. Welcome back to the Kendra Woods Show. So today we are continuing our series on the high-functioning self-doubt archetypes. And today we are going to be talking about the last of the archetypes. And this is one that I think a lot of you will quietly recognize in yourself. And the archetype that we're talking about today is the contorter. And I want to say this right from the beginning, like I have been on all of these episodes where we're talking about the archetypes, is that the contorter is not a label, right? This isn't a label. This is simply a mirror, okay? For you to see yourself, a mirror for you to begin to have language for some of the underlying high-functioning self-doubt patterns that you may be moving through. So this isn't here for you to criticize yourself or judge yourself or to put yourself in another box, right? This is so you can see yourself and see where you may have learned to adjust, edit, soften, or reshape yourself in order to feel safe, approved, or understood. So the contorter is the woman who is deeply aware of how she may be perceived. She's always worried about how people are receiving her, how people experience her. She thinks about what people will think. She thinks about how something that she says might land. She thinks about whether or not her words are too strong, too direct, too bold, too much, or not even clear enough. And because of that, she ends up contorting herself around everyone else's possible reactions. And this is not because she's fake or because she doesn't know who she is or because she lacks depth or intelligence or leadership. It's really because somewhere along the way, her nervous system has learned, if I say this wrong, people might reject me. If I'm too honest, people might pull away. If I fully express what I see, what I know, what I want, or what I believe, it might cost me connection. And so the contorter archetype, instead of leading from the fullness of who she is, she starts managing perception. She starts shaping herself around imagined reactions. She starts filtering her voice before it has ever had a chance to be heard. And today we're going to talk about what that looks like, what it costs, and what becomes possible when you stop contorting yourself and begin leading from calm authority. So let's begin first by naming the pattern clearly. The contorter constantly adjusts herself based on how others might perceive her. So she is the woman who has a message, she has a perspective, a desire, an idea, or a decision inside of her, but before she lets it fully come out, she starts running it through everyone else's possible response. Right? So she's internally, either consciously or unconsciously, asking the questions, will they understand me? Will they understand this? Will they judge me? Will they think I'm being too direct? Will they think I'm being too full of myself or like I'm better than other people? Will they think I'm wrong? Will they unsubscribe from my channel or from my email list? Will they be disappointed? Will they still like me? And this can show up in very subtle ways, right? So she may edit her post over and over again. She may soften the sentence that was actually very clear. She may change her offer because she's worried about, that people will think it's too much. She over-explains because she does not want to be misunderstood. She says yes when she wants to really say no because she does not want to create discomfort. She gives the polished version of herself instead of the honest version. And so she's carrying everyone else's possible reactions before she is even giving them something to respond to. And so again, we want to hear this with compassion because the contorter is usually not someone who does not have a voice, right? She often has a very powerful voice. She often sees things really clearly, and she often knows what she wants to say. But the moment her voice has to leave the safety of her own mind and enter a room, a relationship, a platform, a business, a conversation, or a decision, that's when the self-editing begins. And it's not because she does not have something to say, but because she's trying to pre-manage how it will be received. And when you look at it that way, you can start to see why this pattern is so exhausting. One of the clearest ways that the contorter shows up is in her messaging. Maybe she is writing a post, recording a reel, sending an email, sharing her perspective, or even talking about her work. At first, the message is very clear. There is truth in it, there's energy in it, there's conviction in it. But then the mind starts getting in the way. The mind starts scanning. Is this too direct? Will this make someone uncomfortable? Should I say it softer? Should I possibly add more context? Should I make sure no one takes it the wrong way? And so then she edits it. And then she edits it again. And then she adds maybe 3 more sentences to explain what she really meant. Then she removes like the strongest line because it feels too exposed. It feels too like in your face. Then maybe she changes the ending because she doesn't want to sound too confident. And so by the time the message is shared, it's fine, right? It's polished, it's thoughtful, it's careful, but the power has been drained out of it. The truth has been softened so much that it no longer carries that same authority. And this is one of the costs of the contorter. Her voice becomes diluted and watered down because she's trying to prevent misunderstanding before it happens. But leadership could not be built on the fantasy that no one will ever misunderstand. Because there's always going to be someone who misunderstands you. Leadership requires the capacity to be clear anyway, to be kind and clear, to be grounded and clear, to be thoughtful and clear, to be open to feedback without abandoning the truth of what you came here to say. And this does not only happen in content or messaging, it can also happen in how she leads and how she decides and shows up in relationships with others. So another way that the contorter shows up is through over considering everyone else. Right now, I want to be clear, consideration is not the problem. Being thoughtful is not the problem. Caring about people is not the problem. The issue is when consideration becomes self-abandonment. So for example, maybe she has made a decision in her business, her leadership, her career, her schedule, whatever, her offer or her life, right? And deep down, she knows the decision is aligned. But then she starts thinking about everyone else. She's, again, wondering, what will they think? Will they be upset? Will they understand? Will they approve? Will they think that I've changed too much? Will they feel left out? Will they see me the same way? And so suddenly she's no longer leading the decision. What she's actually doing is managing the emotional weather around the decision. She's trying to make the choice in a way that guarantees that no one will be disappointed or confused or triggered or uncomfortable or inconvenienced. But here's the truth with that. That is absolutely impossible. And it's also not leadership, because leadership does not mean you move through life without affecting anyone. Leadership means that you learn how to stay rooted in your truth while also being responsible, relational, and clear. The contorter often mistakes being understood by everyone for being safe. And that's what this archetype, all the archetypes are really after, right? These patterns are after safety. You want to create safety within yourself. And so in the contorter, this is her biggest mistake. The biggest mistake of this archetype is working so hard to try to be understood by being understood by everyone, and trying to do that to create safety. But being understood by everyone is not the same thing as being in alignment. Being liked by everyone is not the same thing as being in leadership. Being palatable to everyone is not the same as being powerful. So let's talk about the deeper cost of this pattern. The cost of the contorter is that she starts to lose contact with the clearest version of herself. And this is not all at once, it happens very slowly. One softened opinion at a time, one edited message at a time, one swallowed truth at a time, one unnecessary explanation at a time, one moment of choosing approval over alignment at a time. And so then over time, what happens is she may start to feel unclear because she's been clouding her voice. But the truth is, she's not always unclear. Sometimes she has just filtered herself so many times that she can no longer hear her own voice underneath all the adjustments. And she may start wondering, what do I actually think? What do I actually want? What would I say if I was not trying to make this land perfectly? That is a question I love to ask myself when I'm thinking about when I'm working on creating content or doing a video, or I get this idea that pops in my mind and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go talk about this. Instead of, I find myself, my mind does the same thing. It wants to scan. Well, how can I say this? I want to make sure people understand it. And, everything that I've said here. But then I ask myself this question, what would I say if I wasn't trying to make this land perfectly? If I was sitting across from a good friend of mine and this idea came through, like, how would I say it to her? And that's what I think about. Another question is like, what would I choose if I was not trying to keep everyone comfortable? What would my leadership sound like if I trusted myself to be both clear and kind? And so this is why the contorter pattern can feel heavy, because on the outside, she may look polished, thoughtful, considerate, and composed. But on the inside, she is carrying the weight of constantly self-monitoring herself. And that kind of leadership creates pressure, because she's not only leading the thing in front of her, she's also trying to lead everyone else's perception of her. And that's just too much for one woman to carry. We are already carrying enough. We don't need to carry this too. So the shift is not to become careless. It's not to become harsh. It's not to stop caring about impact. The shift is much deeper than that. The shift for the contorter is learning how to stop managing perception and start leading from truth. This does not mean you say everything that comes to your mind. It does not mean you become unfiltered in a way that lacks wisdom. It doesn't mean that you stop being thoughtful, relational, or considerate. It means that you stop abandoning the truth of who you are in order to control how everyone else experiences you. It means you learn how to pause before you edit yourself and you ask yourself the question, am I refining this because it is becoming more clear? Or am I softening this because I'm afraid of being seen? And that is an important distinction, because refinement is leadership. Self-erasure is not. Clarity is leadership. Over-explaining from fear is not. Discernment is leadership. Contorting yourself for approval is not. So inside the work I do, this is where we begin to move through the process of awareness, shift, and embodied action. First, we become aware of the pattern. We notice where the self-editing begins. We notice where we're trying to pre-manage someone else's reaction. We notice where our bodies start bracing before we say the thing, share the message, make the decision, or tell the truth. Then we shift what is underneath it. Maybe it is the belief that being misunderstood means you're unsafe. Maybe it is the fear that your clarity will create rejection. Maybe it's the old story that your power, your desire, your voice, or your conviction is too much. So we shift all of that, and then we take embodied action. Not from pressure or proving or from a place of rebellion, but from a place of calm authority. You say the clearer thing. You make the aligned decision. You share the message without draining the life out of it. You allow your voice to have edges. You let your leadership be felt. And you practice staying with yourself even when someone else does not fully understand. That is the work. That is the work. I remember when I first started my business and I was posting on Facebook, and I would be so afraid that someone would comment and that they would challenge what I said, or that they would say that I was wrong, or that they would argue with like the opinion that I had. I was so afraid. And it's funny because that was one of my biggest fears. And of course, I began to attract that. I had a couple of people that I remember specifically that commented on my post who disagreed with me, or who questioned me, or who said that what I was talking about was ridiculous, right? And that just scared me so much. But the beautiful thing is, I learned that as I saw that and it came, I read those comments, I could feel my heart drop and like my heart pounding. But I grew in that moment because I learned that, okay, you know what? This person that is saying this comment, they have their own perspective. This is my opinion. This is how I see things. And they are sharing their opinion. And so I would simply thank them and move on. Or if it was like a ridiculous comment, I would just delete it and move on. So I learned how to see that even if someone disagreed with me, even if someone told me that I was not doing something the right way. I had someone listening to my podcast about 2 years ago tell me that that I sell too much on my podcast. And I can take that now and just understand that, okay, that's what I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me know that that's how you feel. But that doesn't make me want to shrink anymore, right? Because I've learned that everyone's going to have their opinion. And I have also learned that I am not for everybody. Everyone's not going to agree with me. And I've made peace with that and I've accepted that. And I think when we can accept that and understand that there are going to be people in the world who they're not for you. They are not your people. They do not get where you're coming from. And when we can get to a place of acceptance and be like, okay, you know what, that's all right. I can still show up. And when you do that, when you accept that and you still show up and you shift all the stories, you're then teaching your body that it is safe for you to express your truth. All right. And this is where possibility begins to open. So when the contorter begins to soften this pattern, she does not become less caring. She becomes more honest. Right? She does not become less thoughtful. She actually becomes more rooted. She does not become less relational. She becomes less self-abandoning. And there is a powerful difference because the woman on the side of this pattern is not trying to be understood by everyone before she gives herself permission to lead. And that's where your power is. Okay. She's not waiting for universal approval before she trusts her voice. She's not watering down her truth so it can be easier for everyone else to digest. She is learning how to hold her voice with devotion. She's learning to trust that clarity can be kind. She's learning that being misunderstood does not mean she did something wrong. And she's learning that her leadership does not have to be palatable to be worthy. So she's learning that her message, her desires, her decisions, and her standards can be expressed with steadiness instead of apology. And this is what becomes possible when you step on the other side of this pattern, of this archetypical pattern. You stop using your energy to shapeshift. You stop spending hours editing yourself in a version that feels safer but less true. You stop asking, how do I make sure everyone likes me? And instead, you start asking, what is the cleanest, clearest, most aligned expression of what I know to be true? That is a different level of leadership, and that's calm authority. So if you recognize yourself in this archetype, here's what I want you to sit with. Ask yourself, where am I editing myself for approval instead of refining myself for clarity? That question alone can reveal so much about where you are. Because again, the issue is not that you edit. The issue is not that you care. The issue is not that you want your words to land well. The deeper question is, are you clarifying your voice or are you hiding your voice? Are you considering others or are you abandoning yourself? Are you being thoughtful or are you trying to guarantee that no one will ever misunderstand you? And if you notice that you have been contorting, don't turn this into another reason to judge yourself. Just notice it. Be the calm witness and notice. Let it be a mirror. Let it show you where your leadership is asking for more steadiness. Let it show you where your voice is asking to be trusted. Let it show you where you're ready to stop performing the version of you that feels safest and start embodying the version of you that feels truest. And so this is exactly the kind of work we do inside of Lead Like Her. So if this conversation is speaking to something in you and you know you're ready to explore a deeper way of leading yourself, I want to invite you to join the Lead Like Her waitlist. Lead Like Her is a space where we move through the patterns that keep high achieving women like yourself leading from pressure, self-doubt, urgency, overthinking, proving, and self-abandonment. And we begin recalibrating into calm authority, self-trust, internal steadiness, and devoted leadership. And this journey is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming more deeply anchored in who you already are. It's about leading yourself in a way that feels clean, clear, steady, and aligned. So if you feel called to explore Lead Like Her when the next round opens for enrollment, you can join the waitlist through the link in the show notes. And if you are interested in private mentorship and you want to be supported in a more intimate space, you can simply DM me the word intensive on Instagram to learn more about my Lead Like Her intensive. And that is where we can work together more personally around your leadership, your identity, your self-trust, your patterns, your voice, and the woman you are becoming. And so before we close, I want to leave you with this. You do not have to contort yourself to be loved. You do not have to dilute your voice to be safe. You do not have to pre-manage everyone's reaction before you allow yourself to be honest. Your clarity is allowed. Your voice is allowed. Your standards are allowed. Your leadership is allowed. And so the more you learn to stay with yourself, the less you will need to shapeshift for approval. So this week, pay attention. Where are you softening something that is actually already pretty clear? Where are you over-explaining because you are afraid of being misunderstood? Where are you trying to be liked when your leadership is asking you to be honest? Not harsh, not careless, not defensive, but honest, rooted, and clear. Because the woman you are becoming does not need to abandon herself in order to belong. She can lead from the fullness of who she is, and she can do it with calm authority. So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Kendra Woods Show. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to share it with another woman who may need this reminder. And if you're ready, you can join the Lead Like Her waitlist through the link in the show notes or DM me the word intensive to learn more about the Lead Like Her intensive. Until next time, lead yourself well.